Madam, you are on mute.
You're on mute and your PowerPoint is not yet visible. Okay.
Hello and good evening. Now, how many of you in the first few seconds understood my gestures to say, thank you very much, and I am happy to be here? Would you like to raise your hand if you got that? In fact, for a few seconds, yes, a few of you did mention that I had my my microphone on mute, and that was quite intentional, just to let you know the importance of today's topic and the effect that we can do, and how we can introduce our communication or our message without even saying a single word. So, in fact, one of the great poets, an early essayist by the name of, and I'll show you his name right now, Ralph Waldo Emerson, as you can see on the screen, penned this line. He said, "What you do speaks so loud that I cannot hear what you say." And if you let that sink in for a moment, isn't that true? Don't we always say, action speaks louder than words? In fact, most of the time, people really pay attention to what you do instead of what you're saying. So, my fellow Toastmasters, distinguished guests, my friends, it is an honor and a pleasure for me to be here this evening to talk to you about Your Body Speaks. And I like to call this little introduction, this little session, as speaking between the lines. Because if you've heard the expression before, reading between the lines, I wonder if you really realize what your listeners are reading. If they're reading between the lines of what you're saying, then perhaps what they're reading, in fact, is your body language. So we say in communication, there are three elements, right? There's the words, what you say. There's the way you say it, which is how you say it. And there is what we call body language. So if you look at this pie chart over here, would you agree that this is a good segregation or a good way to distribute the importance of the three elements? What do you think?
No.
Do you think it's fair? No.
No, it's not fair.
It's not fair. Thank you very much. And may I ask, who says why and why not? The chat box, I'm just going to open the chat box right now. If you can chat what you think, or as our speaker already is doing, please let us know why. Go ahead. Somebody want to say something? Yeah? I heard a word. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, somebody, I just can't see who is speaking.
I was speaking, Neri. Rinku.
Go ahead. Hi, Rinku.
Hi, sorry.
Oh, you're here. Hi. Why not?
I think body language speaks louder than the words.
Right.
Body language. Yeah.
So we think body language speaks louder than words. And who agrees with Rinku? Raise your hand. Thank you for showing your raise of hands. And who doesn't agree with Rinku? Who thinks that this is a fair distribution? Oh, a lot of people who don't want to vote. Okay. Practice your right to vote. That's okay. That's okay. I'll show you the actual distribution of the three elements for communication. According to Dr. Albert Mehrabian, who did a study a few years ago, and I'm going to say a few years ago because he's still alive, and you can actually go to his website to check out the results of his study. He said that about 7%, if we go, belongs to words. A 38%, a big chunk of it goes to the way or the tone, the way, the method we say, what we're going to say. And a huge even bigger chunk goes to body language. So what does that mean? In fact, in decoding, in your listeners, if they're decoding your message about your positive or not negative feelings, how you feel about something, what you're expressing, they actually take 7% of their conclusions from the words that are spoken, 38 from, like you said, the tone of your voice, and 55% comes from body language. So Dr. Albert Mehrabian is a psychologist who did this study. And as you can see, my friend Ralph Waldo Emerson also already penned this in the early 1900s, the importance of body language. And if you don't agree with these two experts, I hope that you agree with another expert that I bring in the room, and Rinko knows this expert very, very well, this expert. So, and just to prove my point, he does agree. So body language holds such a power in the way our words are interpreted. And let me give you quite an example with a neutral word, for example. Let's say your names. And a while ago during the networking, Samuel was saying, oh, there's two Sams in the room and two Josephs in the room. And everybody knows that our names are usually more neutral, except to the beholder, right? To the owner of the name. So for us, our names mean something to us, very special. But to the rest of the world, it can be a neutral word. Now let's try to change the tone and the body language for which we say our name. Now imagine, for example, Neri as a name, which is my name and my nickname. If it's said in this way, Neri, would you like to type what you think that speaker means? Type it in the chat box for me. How does that utterance of my name mean? Would you like to interpret? See the chat box. I'm seeing some things there. Yeah. Some respect. Ooh, some flirting from Samuel. Yeah, that's an interpretation. Valid. Romantic, naughty. Oh, there we go. All right. So there is the meaning. Cute. Thank you very much. And there's a change in the meaning of the name based on my proximity to the camera, my facial expression, and even the tone that I used to say my name. And I remember I used to always joke whenever I hear, when I was back in my school days, and my mother used to call me for breakfast to wake me up, right? Before going to school, she would call my name, Neri. And at this point, with the tone and the body language, I knew that I still had 5 minutes. It's like my snooze alarm, right? I can snooze the alarm. But when the body language changes and my mother starts to call my name as Neri, you know that the meaning has changed. And the next body language is probably going to be slippers flying to the room. And I wouldn't want that type of body language, so I right away get up. And that's the idea of the importance of how meaning changes depending on the color of our tone and the body language that accompanies whatever word it is. So let's try to categorize and break up what are the three categories involved in this beautiful body language. So when we say body language, what do we mean? We mean facial expressions. And this is the first thing that you would see usually in a setting such as this, where you can see my face and a limited portion of my top torso because of the limitation of the screen. So facial expressions is the first one. We also have gestures. And we're going to go and define gestures in a little bit. But also we have whole body movement. And so these three things are the things that we're going to try to talk about. So let's take them one by one. The first one we have is facial expressions. Now, what is facial expressions? Facial expressions says here that it is the key to the meaning behind a message. Now, when you told me a while ago that it was a little bit flirty, a little bit naughty, a little bit romantic, the way I said my name the first time, what were the things that you were looking at in terms of facial expression? And I'd like to see you type that on the chat box for me. In terms of facial expression, what changed the meaning the first time I said my name, Neri? Just gonna wait for some people to type in, or if, as usual, if you'd like to open your microphone or unmute yourself, that would be good too. Eyes, right? Angle of the face, so a little bit to the side, the eye contact, expressive, okay? And how would you say expressive? What does that mean, Samuel? What elements in the face told you that it was expressive?
The eyes and the facial combined become a very playful, flirting
Right.
expressions.
Right. So the profile of the face, the flirty expressions. All right. What else? Expressive. All right. What else? Anybody else? What other things were you looking at? So I see eyes, angle of the face, expressive facial expressions. What else? I'm looking for very specific thing. Tone of voice, thank you very much, Tim. Yes, absolutely. But in terms of facial expressions, because that's the topic for the moment, facial expression, in terms of that, aside from the eye, the lips, all right, there you go. So we're looking at the lips, convey messages, eyebrows, thank you very much. Yes, thank you, Harry. So we're talking about the whole face. So we're talking about the eyebrows, the height of the eyebrows, how low the eyebrows are, the eyes, how wide and how big your eyes are or how small you make it, the squinting, the furrowing of the brows, the lips or the smile or the absence of the smile. And so in looking at facial expressions, again, this expert knows the way that he uses his face to convey his message. He didn't even need a script to memorize or words to say in order for you to sit for 30 minutes to 2 hours to watch his movie, and he only had to say the word being. Because things such as the way he manages his face, like his eyes and how wide it is, already colors the meaning of his words just by using his face. So some things I'd like you to remember in facial expressions, a pro tip would be looking at the camera. Because the first thing, especially if you're doing a session like this, in trying to emulate eye contact, we are going to look directly at the camera instead of the screen. So notice, for example, right now, if I look at the camera, I feel like, or I'm emulating an impression of a personal connection with you, my viewer, instead of me reading from the screen where the eye contact or the simulation of eye contact is lost. And if I speak this way for the duration of my presentation, you will not feel as if I am looking or sending a personal message to each and every one of you. So a good habit to develop, especially when delivering through Zoom or any platform such as this, is look at the camera and simulate a personal connection with your audience. It creates an immediate bond, as you can see here, and it makes the audience seem as if that you are speaking to them one-on-one. Another trick that I always say is useful for me when I'm looking at or delivering through online platform is to, and I'll do this right now, illuminate the eye. So as you can see, the difference of my light being off versus my light being on, where you can clearly see that I am trying to emulate eye contact because of the light shining in my face. So a lamp handy in front of your camera makes such a difference from this and me being able to use my eyes to communicate message versus something that looks like this. So if you're gonna learn one trick from me, do this first for the rest of your next speeches. Another pro tip for facial expressions is practice different expressions or versions of expressions in the mirror. So me being naturally smiley, I smile a lot. I didn't realize the importance of this second thing to remember in terms of facial expression, and that is consistency. The ability of a speaker to match the message with the facial expression. So if you are expressing sadness and you drop the smiling muscles from your face and you lower your eyebrows that expresses excitement and you relax the facial features and turn the corners of your mouth down instead of up, you are able to express and say, I am truly sorry for your loss. Versus, congratulations, well done. So your facial expressions really need to match the message that you are saying. And the only way you can achieve this is to know what your face looks like. My suggestion, as I said earlier, would be to take a look at yourself in the mirror and pick specific points of your speech where you can amplify your facial expression to directly support that specific message. So if it's a strong emotion that you'd like to convey, pick that out of your speech, maybe in the introduction, maybe in the body, maybe in the conclusion, and select an appropriate facial expression to punctuate that message. So we talked about facial expression. I gave you 2 tips. Can somebody please recap that for me, please? Maybe open your microphone. Would like to try. And I know the teachers are already smiling. Gracie, for example, is already smiling because she knows this technique. Gracie, yes, please go ahead.
Pardon, Neriya, maybe?
Yes, audible.
Pardon?
Would you like to recap the tips that I just gave for facial expression? Tip number 1.
Consistency.
Consistency. All right, thank you very much. And I think that was Rinku, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Look into the camera.
Consistency, match your message with your words. What's the second one? Who'd like to take the second one?
Look at the camera.
Look at the camera and illuminate your eye. And I think that was, what was that, Harry or Georgie? Harry, thank you so much. All right, thank you very much. So let's move on to gestures. We talked about facial expression. Let's now talk about gestures. So gestures reinforce verbal messages or convey a specific thought or emotion. So there was actually a very interesting study that I saw in a TED Talk, and you're all familiar with a TED Talk, right? We all know what a TED Talk is. Yes. So in a TED Talk, Vanessa Van Williams, one of a TED Talk speakers who in preparation for her own TED Talk, watched hundreds and hundreds of video presentations and analyzed painstakingly the body language of each speaker. Guess what she found out? She found out that the most watched TED Talks had 465 gestures, 465. And yes, they counted it all. Versus the least watched TED Talks, which only had about an average of 272 gestures. And that is a startling difference. Almost half made the difference between your video being watchable, viral even, and a video that was not very watched. So people like to pay attention to messages and speeches that had gestures in them. And so a lot of the times you would find TED Talks opening like this. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here to give you one message that will change your life. And these punctures of hand movements are what we call gestures. So when we talk about gestures, there are typically three types. There is the conventional gestures, there are descriptive gestures, and then there are emotional gestures. So just to break this down, very easy to understand, conventional gestures usually have a universal meaning to them. So that means that these gestures are not very hard to misinterpret. So for example, in the photo that you see here, this would probably mean what? Stop.
Stop. Enough. Yes.
Enough. Therefore, you would not proceed with whatever it is that you're doing. So conventional gestures, if you add them to your speeches to highlight points, they are very easy to understand and doesn't necessarily need additional explanation. Now, the second type of gestures are what we call descriptive gestures. Descriptive gestures are the ones that really describes what the situation or the words mean. So for example, the one that you see in the photo, I could just say, drop the word, I could just say, oh, I entered the room and it was,
Smelly.
and
Smelly.
that was the meaning, thank you, Rinko, that you would get. Smelly, unbearable, stinky. And I didn't even have to say the word because the gesture itself describes the scenario. And the third type of gesture, as you can see here, is an emotional gesture, which is a gesture that touches feelings and emotions, or how you feel about the topic, or how you'd like, or what kind of emotion you would like to convey. So in this picture, as you can see, what do you think is the emotion that is being conveyed in this photo? Anybody?
Eureka.
Elated.
Eureka! Elated, yes. What else?
Wow.
Yes, thank you, Shirley.
I have done it.
I've done it. Thank you, Rinku. Brilliant. And that is something that you can really, again, punctuate your message without even saying the word, because it's in touch to human emotions. And one such thing that doesn't even need a lot of movements would be to touch your heart, for example, or with one hand or two hands, or to touch your cheek, for example, or to salute, for example. And all of these, again, are in touch with human emotions. So 3 types of gestures. Can we do a quick recap for everybody? What's the first type of gesture?
Conventional.
Conventional. And conventional gestures are easy to understand, have a universal meaning to them. What's the second type of gesture?
Descriptive.
Thank you very much, Georgie. Yes, there you go. And the third type of gesture?
Emotional.
Emotional. Brilliant. All right, so we're moving quite fast into the session, and we have finished so far facial expression and gestures. Let's move on to the third one, which is the whole body movement. Now, when I say whole body movement, I mean the placement, use, and movement of the whole body to define your space or to support your message. And when I say that, I mean this, something like this. Or somebody more familiar, maybe this person, Mike Carr, who presented his speech blue, and this was a screenshot of his speech blue that won the last Toastmasters World Champion competition. Yeah. I mean this and this, and not this. Okay? Not this. When we say whole body movement, it means that you are looking at your stance. And when we say stance, it has to be relaxed and balanced. So find your balance and how you position your whole body. You vary your speaking position. So for example, the proximity to the camera, or when you move back from your camera that varies the pace and also the message that you're trying to say. And also, we talk about anchoring. And this is one of my favorite things about whole body movement. It's the ability for us to anchor specific parts of our messages
Emotions.
to specific parts of the stage. So, for example, I really love this example. You can split your 3 points in the main body of your message in past, present, and future. And I can do that by saying, in the past, this is what happened. You know what? Moving to the present, here we are. And this is what I want to happen in the future. And what you're doing is you're anchoring specific parts of your message to specific areas in the screen. I can also do it like this. I can say, before I joined Toastmasters, I was very shy and I really hid at the back of the room. When I started volunteering for roles, I found myself being really interesting and started to really open up. And you know what they say, once we've now mastered the art of speaking, you cannot stop me from joining. When's my next role? So the ability of the speaker to anchor specific movements and parts of your message really allows you to divide your space so that it's clear to your audience that you're transitioning to a new point or using your body to convey either urgency or segments or certain emotions that really sends your message across. So again, when we talk about whole body movements, we talked about the first one, which is what? Your stance. Thank you very much. The second one is?
Anchoring.
Thank you, anchoring. Brilliant. Now, the last one that I'd like to talk about in whole body movement is stage management. Now, stage management is what you do or how you plan for your appearance. Right now, we're doing this on camera. So the importance of managing your stage, of things you have in the background, lighting, for example, I said is a very good tool to improve your stage, but also just in general, your ability to define this space that you have. And I'm looking at my camera when I say this box that you have, and what you do with it. That is stage management. So gestures need to be visible in the box, for example. Your distance to the screen determines what kind or how close you want to feel your audience or you want your audience to feel with the speaker. And what elements do I want to include in this quarter? So for example, I move that plant so that I'm sure that you can see it behind me. So elements of your stage management that allows you to really present what you want to present. Now, just to help us with the rest of the session and to ensure that this learning sticks, I have a quick recommendation. The first one is, as you can see on the screen, there is no substitute for practice. One of my best friends in practicing is a quick mirror, and I'm just going to show you the importance of that. I have one in front of me where I can see my facial expressions. Video recording, so afford yourself to record meetings such as this when you are doing your speeches, most especially, or record yourself during your rehearsals. And of course, there's no fail-safe measure better than your family and friends who are going to give you feedback on your performance and the way that you deliver your body language. So, in summary, your body speaks through facial expressions, gestures, and whole body movements. I'm going to leave you with another quote, and this time is from the father. They say he's the father of the theory of method acting. He said, the language of the body is the key that can unlock the soul. Over to the Toastmaster of the day for any questions. I think we have some time for some question and answer.
Thank you, Toastmaster Nerieza, for that wonderful insights and wonderful session. It was really an eye-opener. To start with your last point, that we never thought that a stage management is equal to screen management. Started from there. No, you were giving a stunning importance of giving the basis of communication, and that you extended up to saying that 55% of the communication is happening through body language and only 7% is done through words. That was a new, and I was about to say an answer for you that no, body language, words are giving 70%, but then it was good that I didn't mention that, because it is 1/10 of what it really makes. And then it was a wonder for me also when you pick up that particular example from TED Talk, that in a 5 to 6 minutes talk, there was 465 gestures that made the impact in the communication. With that, I think our audiences, our members are not happy enough to learn from you. So everybody is going to have a lot of questions to ask you, that how they can improve their communication through the body language, the gestures. So the forum is open for Q&A. We can have some questions and get the right answers from our learned practitioner, Nerieza. So the floor is open for all. If you have a question, you can open up your mic and then ask directly.
Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, thank you. My question is regarding the stage management. So when we say regarding, like, as we are attending online platforms more, so how can we make sure our background is well lit, and also make sure it is clear and it's always visible, and make sure it is allowing the standards as well, as per the Toastmaster International? You are speaking in mute, maybe.
Madam.
I took body language a little too far there and started to mute myself. As far as I know, just to answer your question, Tim, as far as I know, for Toastmaster competitions, we need a blank canvas basically behind us. So I would highly recommend to still look for a wall or a room with a clear wall without any distractions from the back. And this is just to avoid taking away from your speech. Sometimes there are things in the background that could take away from the message you're trying to convey. And that is how Toastmaster International prefers competitions to be delivered. If you'd like to practice this in your speeches, by all means, make sure that the wall is, and for the competition, for example, I showed you a screenshot of Mike Carr, and he was working very close to his wall. I feel like during the duration of his speech, there are moments where he was actually had his back against the wall a few times, but there was clear separation between him and his background. So a good idea to do this would be to have another source of light, and I'm going to show you something right now. A source of light that would directly shine at the back of the speaker towards the background, and that would illuminate that and create an illusion of separation from the speaker and the wall. But also there should be another source of light in front of you, somewhat to an angle, to illuminate your face, because like I said, facial expression is such an important part of body language that you really need to make use of your eyes and your lips and your eyebrows and all of that. So you have to make sure that your face is illuminated as well. I hope that helps, Tim. Yeah.
Yes, really helpful. Thank you.
Welcome.
Neri, I would like to you to add one point regarding use of virtual backgrounds, especially when we are in an online platform. So any tips
Right.
on that particular aspect, please?
Thank you, Sophia. I think that's a really important question. So I had that dilemma today. I actually said, should I or should I not put up a virtual background? And I think I have a simple solution for us. If there is an official virtual background that is being distributed to the club, for example, like Safir has right now, and I can see the district number and the logo behind him, absolutely. The computer, if your computer specs allow it, by all means use it. It would be preferable to have a virtual background that would be plain, not a lot of elements, and be aware of the color of your clothing as well. A lot of times when you're using a virtual background and you have colors such as blue or green, there will be a tendency for you to blend into your background and people will see a floating head, and we don't like that. Definitely we don't like that. So a plain virtual background, especially if you are well, the specifications of your computer is not very high, just to avoid the distraction of you disappearing into your background. Another thing I would recommend is if you're going to use a virtual background to, like I see right now in front of me, I see Joby, Safir, Samuel, Manoj, and even Jebin. Yes, with a plain virtual background, brilliant. I think these are really well done. I would recommend, so for example, Toastmaster Joseph, I think, has a space behind him. While interesting, during a presentation, I would recommend against it. So during a speech or during a presentation, I would recommend against it. Again, just to make sure that it doesn't take away from your speech, because it does play with the eye. And sorry to put you on the spot, Toastmaster Joseph, but for a silent role, oh, that's a lot better. Thank you. For a silent role, no matter, don't worry about it. But for a role, if you are going to be doing a role, let's limit the use of the noisy or busy virtual background. I hope that helps, Safir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Safi sir, for that wonderful question to give more insights on virtual backgrounds. And thank you, Neriya, for clarifying that as well. Any other questions?
Yeah, I am having one question. Yeah, ma'am. I am Vikas. My question is, sir, then you have already communicated through your presentation that the majority of that role is playing by the body language for the communication of speech. And in my experience, that Toastmasters presently are concentrating on the body language rather than content of the speech. And earlier, if you are taking the speech and all, that they are communicating a clear-cut message to the audience or their subordinates. Then most of the people are evaluating the speech and telling your special expression is low, you could have moved a little, like that people are telling. In this scenario, how can we balance in between two? And moreover, people are concentrating on the body language is converting to us a dance or something rather than a effective speech. Over to you, ma'am.
That is such a great observation, Vikas. Thank you so much. And you know what? I do agree. We also do say, and remember this, they say content is king, but delivery is queen. So I feel like they do play important roles. The content of your speech definitely needs to be well written. You need to know your message. There has to be a central message. And I believe we've had sessions already dedicated to all of that. That's been concluded. But in terms of body language, remember that body language is in support of your message. So without a compelling message, you are doing a dance. I agree, because however, the use of body language should always be think of it as a punctuation mark that underlines your message. If you're trying to say something, let your body speak to support what you're saying, instead of allowing only your body to speak. Because there are, as you know, different types of gestures. There are emotional gestures, there are non-conventional gestures that could mean something for you, but wouldn't necessarily mean the same thing to your listeners. So use your body language smartly, in a way that it does punctuate what you're trying to say first and foremost, instead of and I always say this, there are speeches that are going to look theatrical, and we're not trying to be theatrical in our speeches. It's not, theatrics. We're not going to go in, and this is why I showed you the photo a while ago of the guy doing that, because that's not what we're trying to achieve when we talk about body language. Our body language supports our message first and foremost. I hope that helps, Vikas.
Those are drama.
Yes. Was that Samuel?
Yes.
Yeah. Or Tim, yeah. It's not theater, right, Samuel? 22 years of experience, Samuel.
Thank you.
Care to share?
Salamat po.
Thank you.
Well
Thank you,
done.
Vikas, and thank you, Neriya, for giving
Thank
that
you.
answer, that the expression shall not be deliberate to have into it as a kind of a drama or a dance, but instead it has to come naturally as part of your speech. So that gives a good message, rather kind of an awkward presentation of dramatic expressions.
Can I add just one more, Manoj, just very quickly, because I did have a scenario where they think of a gesture that they're so attached to, and they think of the speech to match the gesture. I think that's the wrong way to do it. You're doing it the other way around. First, think of the message, and then think of the gesture that would support the message, instead of being fixated too much on the gesture, and then trying to change the message or the words to match the gesture. I think that's the wrong way to do it. So think of your message first, and then the body language. Thank you. Sorry, Manoj, but I wanted to add.
That's a great answer. That's a great observation as well, and a good piece of advice.
Could I just share one point?
Sure.
Could I just share one point?
During
my past 21 years in contests and all that, I saw one participant, and this is exactly what he did. Okay, watch carefully. He observed somebody jump down to the subway tracks and committed suicide. All right. So the point is, he said, I saw him jump into the tracks and he committed suicide. As the body was brought up to the platform, he was having blood all over the face, coming out from the mouth and the ears. What's wrong with that? Of course, you know what I mean, right?
He was smiling.
Yeah, and I thought this is in a contest, it's not in a weekly meeting. So after the contest, I asked him, I say, hey, I know him. So I say, hey, were you trying to make a humorous speech or what? He said, no, I'm serious. So you mean that guy really died, right? He said, yes. And then why are you smiling? You know what he said to me? He said, Sam, my instructor, my coach says, whenever I speak, I must keep smiling. I nearly fainted. It's not a joke, it's the fact. Okay, that was what actually happened. He never got in, of course.
Samuel, we have many lawyers in attendance here. They will definitely take it to court.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you, Samuel, for giving that best example to show us that, okay, how your expressions should match or should not be in the opposite direction. Thank you for that. I know every speaker participating in this session wants to raise several questions to Neriya, and even in the presence of DTM Samuel. But for the paucity of time, we have time for one more question. So the most important question can be asked from the audience. Please, the last question.
Yeah, I will ask one question. We have seen in some speakers when they are describing maybe something very sad, they will start crying, literally crying, with the tears coming out of the eyes and all. Whether it is considered to be good, or it is only, we can say that it is only a dramatic thing. Because nowadays, I think in Toastmasters also, if you see the competitions, contests, they are also giving more importance to monetization. Whether it is a good practice, or what is your opinion?
I have mixed feelings about this, Ninan. Thank you for that question. I do see that on some occasion, the intensity of the emotion that we're trying to convey sometimes moves us to tears. But I always would like to caution against overly doing it, because what we're trying to do is, yes, convey intensity in the feelings and the emotions, and sometimes we want the audience to feel that. When we're doing a speech, we're taking them on a ride, and sometimes the highs and the lows, that punctuation is important, and sometimes the gap between how intense the happiness is and how intense you'd like the sadness to be, the wider the gap, the more intense the journey, so to speak. However, I feel like at moments where you get too wrapped up in your own emotions, you lose the ability to convey your message more effectively. So if there is a balance to strike in the journey that you're taking the audience, remember, you're driving, and you're driving the speech, and you're driving the journey of your audience. I think it might be a better idea to convey the feelings and let your tone and your body language absolutely support that, but don't push it to the edge. I would like to actually hear from more experienced speakers, because this is my opinion, absolutely. If there are any other thoughts on the matter, I'd like to hear them as well.
Neri,
And I hope
just to add my thought on that particular aspect, my view is that always move in moderation. And if the movement of the body, of your gestures, of your facial expressions, or any aspect, if it does not add value to the message, leave it aside. Always move in moderation. So that is my thought process. But in a club meeting, if you want to experiment, if you want to come out of the shackles, because most of us have been taught in schools that good speech is to stand still and deliver the speech, which is not true. So if you want to come out of the shackles, and if you want to experiment in a club meeting, by all means do so, so that it will help you to come out and to be more expressive. But in a contest, in a public forum, in a corporate environment, always move in moderation, or use body language in moderation. That would be my recommendation.
absolutely. Thank you, Safir. I do agree, absolutely. I hope that helps, Ninan.
Thank you, Safir. Perhaps maybe DTM Samuel or Advocate Hariraj can add few words to that before we wrap up this session.
Nothing from my side. Already, whatever has to be said has been said by Neri, so nothing to add.
Thank you, Hariraj. Thank you, Nainan sir, for raising that particular question, which leads up to a panel discussion to see the perspective from different angles. And as I said, we need to learn more from you, Toastmaster Nerieza. And we are looking for more sessions from you. And it was a great session. speaking between the lines. What a wonderful thought. And to achieve that, go through 3 different steps. Or remember 3 things: facial expressions, gestures, the whole body movement. That summarizes the whole discussion. A great session, well delivered. People have got a lot to take away from this particular session. And I'm going to see that a dramatic change in the meeting presentations, in the speeches of all the attendees today. And we are going to report back to you that what changes we are seeing in the next meetings because of your impact. Thank you, Nerieza, for that wonderful session. Let's move to our normal meeting proceedings.